don't think I have ever read so few pages that leave me with so many questions. So many questions. Hi folks, welcome back to my channel. I'm Kat and today I would like to talk about what I get when I tell my boyfriend I don't know what I want for Christmas, just get me books I can review for my channel. Buttception by Chuck Tingle. So the back of this little booklet calls it a free book collection, but it's free short stories. The author calls them Tingler, which, then again, you have no expectation for length, but those are not books or novellas, those are short stories, because all three stories combined come to 34 pages, so very far removed from an actual book. In the first story, Tuck is heartbroken over breaking up with his girlfriend and meets the unicorn/sailor Hunter, and over the course of one dinner falls madly in love. But Hunter is about to sail the world for a year, so they exchange letters until they meet again a couple of months later and things get spicy. In the second story, a scientist clones a bud with wings from his own DNA and proceeds to date his creation. In the third story, the author Chuck Tingle gets sued by his own novel because he's not getting any of the royalties. They meet up to settle this out of court and the discussion ends in bed. For so few pages, there's a lot to unpack here, and it's also kind of tricky if you have to keep all explicit stuff out of this review really, but because it gets very graphic, really fast. But all three stories follow the same pattern, like they meet up, they are instantly drawn to each other, they fall madly in love in like no time at all. They get down and dirty, and that's kind of it. Now this wouldn't be so bad, but then the sex scenes themselves also follow the exact same pattern in all three stories. First, the human part of the couple does something with his mouth, then he's at the bottom, then they switch, and then things end up in the human's face. In all three stories, literally the same thing. A bit more variation wouldn't have hurt here, I think. Now if I have to pick a favorite out of these three, I'd say the first story because I had to laugh so much. First off, the first letter that Tuck gets. First, all of this romantic stuff, oh my god, you're the light of my life. It's like, dude, you had one dinner, calm down. But no, all of this hyper romantic stuff, and it's like, love of my life and blah blah blah. It's like, okay. Then a whole section on what he wants to do to Tuck. And then he goes into, yeah, I'm going to collect sea glass and make an online business with it. It's like, wow, this letter was a real roller coaster. But don't worry, he becomes a billionaire with his sea glass business because that makes total sense. You have to learn not to question the logic in these stories too much because it's gonna hurt you otherwise. The next part in the first story, I think I spent like at least a full minute laughing at this, but their sex scene. So Hunter goes on top at some point, but because we're talking about a unicorn here, right? So none of the people in these stories date human counterparts. And this one is a unicorn. So the way this was described is like, well, he gets into position and then he holds onto the torso and then Hunter goes galloping along the beach. Now the mental image I get for that is just, yeah, dude holding on for dear life, but they're both having the time of their life, so, who cares? Then as a side note, he gets to this island by helicopter, because, Hunter's now a billionaire because sea glass sells like hotcakes, I guess. And I would have to assume that he brought some luggage, but he gets off this helicopter, he runs straight for Hunter, and they start making out, and I just imagine this helicopter pilot standing there like, I'll just drop your luggage in the sand then, and then I'm gonna go. And oh my god, I'm seeing way too much because, yeah, it's amazing. Now, the downside, I mean, it has some entertainment value, I'm not gonna lie about that, but I have so many questions left for the world building. So in the first one, because Hunter doesn't want anybody else on his private island, he just clones worker drones from his own DNA. And I guess they just live there in servitude, and I don't know how evolved their brains are, or, but the ethics are just completely ignored. It's like, yep, I cloned myself so they can do all of our work and we'll just hang out and chill. Okay, so cloning is a thing, that's all you ever hear about it. There is no mention of the science or whatever. And then you get to the second story and they are trying to reverse engineer what Hunter has done on his island. And because you have to go full mad scientist with it, they just mix their own DNA with animal DNA, and it didn't pan out until our scientist mixes DNA from his butt and his brain with hawk DNA. Because, yes, I'm not sure how they even got DNA from his brain, because that's invasive surgery, but never mind that. And also where you take your cells should not matter in the least for DNA, but, ignore all of that. But they grow this butt with wings in the span of one day. And all questions about cloning aside, then his fellow scientist notices, ooh, there's something going on here between him and the stuff that is grown from his own DNA, because how narcissistic can you be if, the only thing that really turns you on is something that has been made from yourself? And it's like, but okay. Also doesn't have a face, but more on that later. And then he proceeds to be the wingman and tells them to go off on a date or whatever. And it's like, is there no quarantine, like no procedure to keep things safe, to make sure that this can actually go out, that it's viable, it's not gonna die in the next half hour because you did mad science just now? But no, none of that matters, and they go out for dinner. Now we come to the many anatomy questions. For one, I still don't know how exactly Hunter is built. You get a detailed description of his private parts down there, but outside of that I only have the picture on the cover to go by, really. So he must have a unicorn head. He seems to have a human torso, possibly a unicorn center. He goes galloping along the beach, so clearly he has a horse body or lower body. I don't know. It's a bit unclear. Same for the second story. Okay, it's a butt with wings. On the cover it's actually wearing kind of a t-shirt. I'm not sure how that works either. And I don't know where the other equipment is that we get to see in the second story at some point, but it must be dangling there somewhere. But then they go out to dinner. How does this thing eat? It doesn't have a face, it doesn't have a mouth. Are we talking about the South Park episode where they reverse eat, but then where does it go? It's only a butt, there's nothing else. Same for the third story. The human's partner is a book in this. He himself says that he is made of paper, that's why he can't get into the shower. But then we also hear that he has abs, and clearly he has a face and arms and private parts that he can do things with. Where the heck are those? I have no idea. The anatomy is a great riddle in all three stories. And there are other questions for the third story as well. So the dude is a book, and at the end he says that he has to go because some woman is about to pick him up in the bookstore. So is he every copy of his own novel? Like every time anybody picks him up he has to teleport or go there so he can be read? He's the only novel that we encounter aside from one email that Buck Trungle gets at the end, so I guess one of his other novels has come to life as well. But why does this only apply to these novels? Are there other books walking around? Can they be in several places at once? I have absolutely no idea, and the story also won't tell you, and I don't think it cares to either. Now, given how few pages we're looking at here, there were many mistakes and typos left, like a shocking amount, I have to say. You would think that if you only look at a couple of pages before publishing, you would actually manage to proofread them a bit better. If you miss stuff in 80k words, sure. But this is like 12 pages per short story and there are many mistakes left. The other issue is the price point, I think. For Buttception you would pay $5.59 for the Kindle edition and almost 9 quid for the physical edition. And you don't get an awful lot for your money there. I mean, I was entertained, especially with the first story. but is it worth the money? And I'd have to say no, it's excessive for what you get. So between all of the questions I have left, the repetitive patterns, and the, quite frankly, outrageous price point and the many mistakes left in it, I'd have to give it this cat. I was entertained, and I think it was a fun gift. But I think I'm good with just owning a single Tingler if this is the quality we're looking at. Let me know in the comments whether you've read any Tingler before and what you make of it. Like and subscribe if you want to help this channel out, and I'll be back next week with another video. Bye folks!